The iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max are in the studio, and I don't know how I feel about them. I've got a lot of thoughts and things to test, but I want to start off with the colors. But before that, a quick shout out to our sponsor Spigen, with their latest range of cases for the iPhone 17s. My favorite case is always the Ultra Hybrid MagFit Neo 1, which perfectly matches the iPhone 17 Pro's more industrial design. So whether you want something sleek, rugged, or practical, Spigen has you covered. Check them out using the links below. Now, back to the colors. We don't get a black this year at all. We only get that on the base iPhone 17 and on the Air, which I do think looks incredible with its polished black frame. The Pro models, however, get silver, cosmic orange, and deep blue. And I don't know which one I even like. As in, I do quite like the way the orange looks. It kind of reminds me of the Apple Watch Ultra's International Orange action button. However, I wouldn't use it myself as it's way too flashy. I also like the way the silver looks, but I hate this very visible white glass cutout on the back, which just doesn't match the silver frame at all and looks like a sticker. The orange and blue colors don't really have this issue as the glass matches the aluminum frame more. And speaking of the blue, this is my color of choice and the one I went with this year. However, I do wish that Apple had a true black color as that's usually my choice. I think the reason why Apple didn't go for black this year is purely for durability reasons, as there have been a number of reports on social media that the blue does scratch very easily. So just imagine the black. We may have a similar issue to the black iPhone 5, Apple's last black back aluminum phone, which was a scratch and scuff magnet. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on these colors and the new design. I do like the new design, but I do still think the 16 Pro's back design looked far more elegant, with colors such as this desert titanium here. It made it feel like a fashion accessory, unlike the orange here, which is cool, just not quite as elegant. However, if you do pair your iPhone 17 Pro or 17 Pro Max with a matching colored wallpaper like these ones from our Relentless Reflections pack by Michael, which you can find in our app Wallpapers. It is part of our February collection, and you can download wallpapers for free from the App Store. As for how the 17 Pro and Pro Max feel in the hand, they're very thick, like thicker than the last generation. So both the 17 Pro and the 17 Pro Max do feel like tanks in my hand, especially when compared to the ultra-thin iPhone Air. And I should also say that compared to the Air, the Pro models also feel cheaper. Both Harry and Zara from my team mentioned the same thing when they first saw the Pros. They just don't have that jewelry-like feel that the Air does. That being said, the Pro models are still very comfortable. Since the frame is a bit more rounded than the 16 Pro and Pro Max frame last year, they do actually feel better. And I also like the perfectly smooth transition between the back and the frame now. I just wish we didn't have that weird glass patch on the back, as I think it would have looked way better that way. Another change is the new anti-reflective coating on the display. So compared to the 16 Pro Max, it definitely makes a difference, especially if you're outdoors and viewing a darker piece of content. However, compared to the S25 Ultra, that one is still the king in terms of reflectivity. Now, the brightness has also been improved this year, going from 2000 nits all the way up to 3000 nits outdoors. And I gotta say, I've noticed this too. Like, I wouldn't say that the 17 Pro Max looks 1000 nits brighter, but it is still brighter than the 16 Pro Max was. Although, to my eye, it is not quite as bright as the S25 Ultra, despite having a higher brightness number on paper, which I think is thanks to its anti-reflective coating, which does make it look even better outdoors. Now, I will be going to Hawaii soon for the Snapdragon Summit. Actually, I'm literally there while you're watching this video, so do subscribe for my full review, as I will be testing its visibility in this super bright environment as well, something that we just don't have this in the UK, unfortunately. Now, aside from the display, another upgrade is the new telephoto camera. We're going from the old 5x 12 megapixel sensor to a brand new 4x 48 megapixel sensor that is also larger by 56%. Now, if we take a look at a 2x photo, and by the way, I've just teleported to the beautiful Maui in Hawaii for the 2025 Snapdragon Summit, reason why my background will change in some of these shots here. But back to the zoom. At 2x, which is where they'll both be using the main module, the iPhone 17 Pro does actually seem to be a bit sharper. We can see that the top of this lamppost is clear on the 17 Pro, and same goes for this texture on this fence here. At 4x, the 17 Pro will be better than the 16 Pro, as that one did not have a 4x lens. It's also better than the S25 Ultra, which only has a 3x and a 5x lens. But surprisingly, the Pixel 10 Pro XL, which also doesn't have a 4x lens, only a 5x, does actually look just as good. Switching to 5x to keep things fair, the 17 Pro is still better than the 16 Pro. You can see how noisy the 16 Pro is. However, the S25 Ultra performs better, with a more defined image, clear textures, and just clear in general. Same goes for the Pixel 10 Pro XL, which is also superior here. Moving on to 10x, the iPhone 17 Pro Max does perform better than the 16 Pro Max, with less noise and a clear image overall. However, the S25 Ultra does look clear if you look at the balcony glass here, and the Pixel 10 Pro XL also looks sharper here too. Moving on to 25x, which is the maximum digital zoom that a 16 Pro Max can do, the image doesn't actually break down as much on the 17 Pro Max if you look at these windows here. However, since the 16 Pro Max does add a lot of sharpening in post, there isn't that much of a difference between the two when it comes to the final result, which I'm quite disappointed to see. The S25 Ultra is significantly better here, although extremely over-sharpened, which I'm not a fan of either, whereas the Pixel is fine, just not amazing either. That's because the Pixel's AI processing kicks in above 30x. So let's test out 30x. Specifically, what's the maximum zoom we can do on each? Well, the 17 Pro Max can only go up to 40x, and the result isn't bad, but it's not too great either. Although it is still better than the 16 Pro's 25x maximum zoom, especially if you look at the detail of this building here. The S25 Ultra can zoom in to 100x, although the quality is completely destroyed. Its AI reconstruction is really bad here. The Pixel, however, is shockingly good. Just take a look at how well it reconstructed this image. Sure, it's not the real photo anymore, so to say, something to keep in mind, but the result is truly impressive. Now, since this new telephoto has a much larger sensor, it is considerably better in low light, as you can see here in this 10x low light shot. The S25 Ultra is sharper, but that is due to its post-processing, as the image is also noticeably darker. I would say the Pixel is the clearest here, although it seems to be processing the image quite heavily, as some of the carpet is quite messed up. As for the main camera, we've done some side-by-side shots against the 16 Pro, and I'm not seeing any difference whatsoever, not even when it comes to the image processing, which isn't that surprising at all, since Apple is using the exact same main sensor here as the 16 Pro, 15 Pro, and even the 14 Pro. However, the front camera is completely new, and this is the one that I'm very excited to try out. And I'm really happy with it. Like, not only is it noticeably sharper than the old front camera, being 18 megapixels instead of 12, but the field of view is significantly improved as well. And since this is now a square sensor, you can take vertical and landscape shots even when your phone is in vertical orientation. Yeah, this is a huge upgrade. Now, the dynamic range in ProRes looks to be about the same, so I'm not really seeing any improvements here. But what is new this year is that the iPhone 17 Pro can now do ProRes Log 2 and ProRes RAW as well. Now, for this you do need to be using the Final Cut camera app and also have an SSD connected, otherwise it won't work. Also, ProRes does take up a lot of space. For example, I've got a 1TB SSD here, and I can only record 27 minutes of ProRes RAW HQ at 60 FPS. Now, you can also record in OpenGate, which is really cool. This gives you more vertical space for framing in both vertical and horizontal orientation, so that's really cool. As for the dynamic range, here's my Panasonic Lumix S9 camera recording in log. Now, here's the same footage graded. Now, here's the iPhone's ProRes RAW, and now here's the same footage graded. Now, while you do get more dynamic range in ProRes RAW than shooting normally, it still doesn't come close to a dedicated camera. And keep in mind, I wasn't even recording in RAW on the Panasonic. So in terms of dynamic range, it's good, but again, doesn't compare to the dedicated camera. Another upgrade that I've noticed is the speakers. To me, the 17 Pro Max sounds louder, richer, and with more bass as well compared to the 16 Pro Max. Just listen for yourselves. So what about that performance? How powerful is the new A19 Pro chip with 12 gigabytes of RAM compared to the A18 Pro with 8 gigs of RAM? Well, we first ran an iMovie export test, which was our Nintendo Switch 2 review, which was close to a 15-minute video, and then we added a filter to see how long they would both take to export. The iPhone 16 Pro Max took 5 minutes and 55 seconds, while the 17 Pro took 8 minutes and 22. Yes, actually longer. And we ran this test multiple times, however, we kept getting the same result. The 16 Pro Max was considerably and consistently faster than the 17 Pro Max. My guess is that this was simply because iMovie has not yet been updated to take advantage of the A19 Pro chip. This is because when we ran the Wildlife Extreme test from 3D Mark, the iPhone 17 Pro Max did perform noticeably better, by being 23% faster than the 16 Pro Max. So the 17 Pro Max does for sure perform faster, it's just that you need to be using an app that takes full advantage of that extra power. Now, I was also curious to measure the thermals to test out the 17 Pro Max's new aluminum unibody and also its new vapor cooling chamber that Apple claims makes the 17 Pro Max 40% more thermal efficient. And I can confirm that this is definitely the case. You can see that during our export test, the 16 Pro Max had this hot area on the left-hand side that got to 37 degrees Celsius while the export was going, after which it started going down. The 17 Pro Max got up to 34.7, and that was the highest it got to right before the export finished. So there was more than a 2-degree difference between the two at their peaks. Also, notice how the heat was more evenly spread on the 17 Pro Max as opposed to concentrated into one area like on the 16 Pro Max. And lastly, we also get these new TechWoven cases, which are exclusive to the Pro models. These are a replacement for Apple's discontinued fine woven cases, which were dropped due to their infamous durability. Yeah, that was just so bad. And those were, by the way, a replacement for Apple's leather cases, which were by far my favorites. And I gotta say, I do quite like these TechWoven cases. They have a really nice texture to them, and they're far nicer and more durable than the old fine woven. But yeah, I do still miss that leather. Okay, so Daniel from Hawaii here. I've spent the past 3 days with the 17 Pro Max, and I gotta say, a couple of interesting things that I've noticed. First of all, the performance. It feels noticeably more fluid than the 16 Pro Max. Like, I'm not sure if this is just the fact that, I've restored from a backup. It's not really a fresh install, but it is new, and it feels just way more smoother, or if this is something to do with the extra 4 gigs of RAM. Regardless, this phone is very, very fluid. Other than that, the display is noticeably brighter outdoors, even here in Hawaii. However, it still dims after about 4 minutes, which is the same as before. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the battery life is better, but it's not game-changing. For example, I took it off the charger at 6:30 a.m. on my travel day, and then by 2:30 p.m. it was already dead, so I only got about 4-ish hours of screen on time. I did use it a lot during those hours and also hotspotted, and the phone was still indexing my files, so the battery life will be worse in that case. But still, I was expecting more here. Having said that, do stay tuned for our real-world battery drain test, which will be coming once I'm back from the Snapdragon Summit. As for the new zoom camera, it is better than the 16 Pro Max's for sure, but again, nothing mind-blowing, and still incomparable to the Chinese phones. Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo, they all have a much better telephoto. So yeah, do let me know in the comments if you want to see a camera comparison between the 17 Pro Max and one of the Chinese flagships. Still, I'm gonna use it for the next few weeks as my daily driver, and I'll let you guys know what else I end up discovering, and whether or not you should upgrade to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Until then, let me know what you guys think, and stay tuned for more iPhone 17 videos on the channel, battery drain tests, comparisons, and way more. I'm Daniel, ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.